Many believe life as we know it has changed irrevocably, and that in this seismic shift lies an opportunity to turn things around, improve our world, and make life better for the majority, especially in poor countries. It is time to reboot Nigeria. This is Pivotal. Nigeria has been in a state of unrest in the last few weeks. First were street protests by young people demanding an end to police brutality. Then, on the heels of the agitations, came a wave of looting and vandalization across the nation. At the center of these upheavals is the Nigerian police force, saddled with maintaining internal security of the nation. And while the body is responsible for protection and crime management, it has been accused of high-handedness and abuse of human rights. Generally, many also believe that they are not doing well in curtailing crimes and civil unrest. The general state of insecurity in Nigeria, therefore, contributes to the low level of public confidence in the police force. There have been insistent calls for reform across the country's entire police system, but the calls for change are almost becoming routine with every government. Between 2006 and 2012, 3 presidential committees were constituted by the federal government to make recommendations for reforming the police. Why is it hard to implement these recommendations of the 3 different panels from the past? Will the revamp announced by the president go the way of others, or is it different this time? On Pivotal today, I'm joined by the Commissioner for Human Rights, the Police Service Commission, Honorable Romy Mom, and Dr. Otiv Ibuzo, the Executive Director of the African Center for Leadership, Strategy, and Development. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Pivotal. If I could start with you, Mr. Commissioner, 3 different panels, recommendations spanning a few years. Why, in your view, have these recommendations not been fully implemented?
Well, I guess you've captured it aptly and correctly, and I think it's not just about now. When I say now, I'm talking about the present administration. We have over the years cultivated a culture of setting up commissions of inquiry or going into panels that brings out that bring reports that are often placed on the shelf. And all the past reports you're referring to, unfortunately, have also gone down the same route and have the same fate. But with what happened a few weeks ago, the last recommendations that were released 2 years ago, we at the Police Service Commission, we were served a copy by the National Human Rights Commission a week ago. And what we're trying to do now is see how we can go into immediate implementation. And I also note that the National Human Rights Commission has also sent some report to the Federal Minister of Justice to ensure prosecution for the persons who we have found to have been culpable in the report, as indicted in the report, so to speak. On the whole, though, I note and I also agree that we can do better as a nation. We can do better as a country, that when these sort of recommendations or reports are put out there, we should implement them as quickly as possible if it will enhance the situation that brought about the need to investigate those situations and issue those reports.
Dr. Otiv, we heard the commissioner there lamenting the fact that previous recommendations have not been implemented. Are you optimistic, given what you know of what has happened in the past? Have the fundamental issues which stopped reform from being implemented in the past, have they been addressed now? And will we therefore see a different approach?
We are hopeful that this time around it will be implemented. like Romy Mom mentioned, since 2006, there has been several panels that have been set up. In 2006, the Alhaji Damadami panel was set up by President Obasanjo. In 2008, the MD Yusuf report, a panel was set up by Yaradua. In 2012, the Pari Osayende panel was set up by Goodluck Jonathan. And last year, the Ojuku panel was set up by President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, like Romy said, many of the previous panels, not just on police, panels on crises, on religious crises, on kingship tussles, are usually not implemented. But I think the hope that this present one will be implemented is predicated on the fact that it is preceded by the NSAS protest, which jolted everyone and has compromised security across the country. And I think there is a new zeal and for government to implement the report. And we're hopeful because if you look at the previous report, Yusuf report recommended that Damadamir report should be implemented. Pari Osayende recommended that Yusuf report should be implemented. So what needs to be done to reform the police is known.
Okay, so let's get into those issues. What exactly should we be reforming? Let me ask the commissioner. What, from your point of view, as the police commission, are the fundamental issues that make it difficult for the Nigerian police to be effective and to provide the sort of service that enables Nigerians to look at them as partners in fighting crime, as opposed to a police force that they're terrified of?
You know, the substantive law for a long time that was in the main that regulated the affairs of the Nigerian police was a 1943 law, 73 years old law. And I think for me, the passage of the new Police Act in 2020 was a monumental step in how policing should be in Nigeria. This was some reform that cut across the whole spectrum, and it aggregated most of the recommendations in the past reports that Dr. Otive referred to. And even if you look at what the Ojuku panel also came up with, some of those things are already captured in the report. I will highlight briefly some of them. One for me is the issue of human rights approach to policing in Nigeria. The substantive police law, as it used to be, had always been that the police was beholden to the authorities and not the people. Now we have a police law that seeks to bring about a situation where the police is human rights centered, responds to people's needs and all of that. Closely associated to that is the issue of community policing, which deepens and enhances, creates trust between the communities and the police. This is something that has been missing for a long time, the issue of trust. Community policing now is bringing about that. And again, the issue of abuse of rights in terms of brutality, in terms of illegal detentions, and all of this. The ACJA, that is the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, has also been brought into the Police Act, as it were. And when you marry the two together, then you can begin to see that issues of illegal detention, if implemented, will go a long way in being resolved. But for me, this is the thing. All our reforms with regard to police has ignored a very, very important factor. And I'm afraid, and I hope that we take this on board going forward. That's the issue of accountability to the people. Accountability. And this is, for me, by the law, is in the Police Service Commission. where you have representatives of the police there, the judiciary, the media, organized private sector, women groups, and human rights, or civil society organizations, NGOs. They are all represented at the Police Service Commission. And that is the statutory body to oversight the police. Now, for whatever reason, whether the lack of effectiveness of the commission, or government not looking at it the way it should, or citizens ignoring it, that commission has not operated at an optimal level. And so accountability and sanctions, oversight of the police has remained weak.
Okay, so Dr. Otiv, the issue of impunity and a lack of accountability, there are a lot of people who believe part of the problem is that the way the police is structured at the moment, with the appointment of the IGP sitting in the hands of Mr. President, this means a lack of independence, and therefore he is not in a position to do fundamental reforms even if he wants to, because sometimes politics gets in the way. What are your thoughts regarding this?
Thank you very much. I think that is part of the problem, but security agencies, police institutions across the world have issues with regard to accountability because they are given enormous powers. And all over the world, there is potential for abuse. And so what is done is that there is regulation of the work of police agencies and even indeed other security agencies by domestic and international law. And at least there are 4 critical ways by which you can ensure the accountability of the police. First is internal control. That the police institution itself should have not just clear mandate, but they must operate under the rule of law, under the rule of engagement, under code of ethics, and in accordance with law. Secondly, there is expected to be some form of executive control in terms of ministerial knowledge and control, which in a way to engage with the police. And thirdly is parliamentary oversight. There are supposed to be Senate Committee on Police Affairs, Senate House of Reps Committee, who are supposed to also have oversight. And finally, the 4th area is in terms of oversight institutions, which Romy Mom talked about. But beyond the civilian oversight institution in form of the Police Service Commission, the media is expected to play a role. Citizens groups and citizens are expected to play a role. So how do you ensure the accountability of the police? You have to have internal control. You have to have control from the executive. You have to have parliamentary oversight. You have to have control from the Police Service Commission, from the media, and from citizens. What we have seen in Nigeria is that people, all of these agencies that are supposed to have control have not operated to the optimum.
Let me ask
so
the
it's not just the
Commissioner-
Police Service Commission.
Yeah, but let me ask the Commissioner, why do you think those 4 things listed by Dr. Otiv have not been possible?
First and foremost is the issue of synergy. Synergy is really very important. For example, I would take the issue of the internal control within the police itself, which is situated in the office of the IG, for example, and that of the Police Service Commission, which is external. These 2 bodies cannot, they must be in synergy. The relationship must be harmonious. And whether or not the Police Service Commission is in harmonious relationship with the Office of the Inspector General of Police, I think much more can be done towards a certain level of harmony.
Let me ask this. Are we fundamentally having the wrong conversation, in the sense that is the police as currently structured best qualified to run Nigeria the way we do? And here I'm talking about the conversation around community policing and the fact that some people believe that the police is too centralized and you need to either have regional policing or even state policing, and some even argue the community policing that you are seeing, we've talked about, needs to be a little bit more robust and more institutionalized.
I agree with you entirely. Community policing varies from one situation to another. And the type that is envisaged under the Police Act is a type that seems to ride on the back of what is structured a long time ago in terms of constabularies and all of that. But if you look at Nigeria closely the way it is, whether it's community policing or by whatever name you want to call it, we must go down to the communities. So for example, someone who is in my village, for example, you want to see police officers that you can relate with, that can take decisions to a certain extent. But when everything has to come all the way up, then that communication and decision-making that can foster trust and some form of belief and relationship becomes much more difficult. So probably taking this down to a level where you have divisional police offices and state commands being fairly in charge of decisions in their locales will be much more, will facilitate community policing better than the way it is today.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we start looking at some of the specific issues that face policing in this country. Welcome back to Pivotal, where we're talking about police reform with Mr. Romy Mom and Dr. Otiv Ibuzo. Okay, so I mean, Mr. Commissioner, are you seeing anything around attitude, around mindset, starting with both the rank and file of the police, but also officers, but also among political office holders regarding the belief that perhaps the time has come to actually put policing, you know, on the right foot, so that we actually have modern policing that includes the use of forensics, investigation, respect for human rights, remuneration that works for everybody?
What Nigerians do need now, and what we need right now, is a police force that is obviously going in the right direction towards that optimum situation we want. Because even in the developed world, as we would like to call it, there are still notches to cover. And so we need to start from the basics. The first time I was opportune to go to a police training school in Enugu, Oji River, I was aghast as to where we even train police officers. Because this is not the kind of officers that come into the society and understand that human beings should be treated differently, because they are not treated like human beings where they are trained, and it's the norm. So we need to start from those basics. And you know, that is where you train the recruits or the constables and all of that. And if you go there and you see what is going on there, you would be shocked as to how persons give so much in order to serve their country. And so when these persons come out of those schools, sometimes it's very difficult for them to give what they don't have.
Now that the government has said it is going to go into certain reforms, the pronouncement by the president, does it, in your view, go far enough? Are we talking to the sort of issues that you say are needed, even if, like you've insisted, we're not going to see a total overhaul that gives us a brand new police overnight, and what you're looking at is incremental progress?
I believe so, and I will go beyond saying I believe so to say this. Even if you take away what the president is saying, the recommendations we have had, the laws as it is today, what we need is implementation and resource allocations to ensure that these things happen. Once those things are done, the progressive the implementation or the progress we are looking for will begin to be very, very manifest. Dr. Tive talked about, for instance, the issue of the curriculum that was changed or that was made better. I can tell you that is not the curriculum that has been implemented today. We are still implementing that curriculum of your powers, your powers, your powers.
Are you surprised by that, Dr. Otiv, that you did a lot of work in terms of trying to get the police educated so that they understand about responsibilities and rights, and that it is still that one-sided system that you've described?
Well, I'm not totally surprised because there is a huge challenge in the country. And this challenge spans through all sectors. That is the challenge of having strategic and visionary leaders in all sectors. I mean, it's a huge challenge in the country. The challenge of identifying a problem in a sector, designing a program to deal with it, implementing that program, evaluating the program, and redesigning another one.
No, but we're talking here in the context of a protest that has forced the government to basically say, we're going to try and do something. And they've given sort of specific commitments to the certain things they're doing. And it is in that context I'm saying, you've said you've spent a bit of time, for example, looking at a curriculum and coming up with something which presumably you presented and was accepted. And yet here we are, you know, with the commissioner telling us that that curriculum is actually not being implemented. Surely this is not a leadership in that sense problem. It is more a question of maybe the schools themselves, or at least the people in charge of police education, even if it is leadership, if it's mid-scale leadership, so to speak.
Yeah, leadership is in every sector and in every level. But like we said, I've consistently said in the beginning of the program, the challenge is huge. And we hope that with this new enthusiasm generated from the NSAS program, and with the commitment of the president and what they have said so far, and I think they have also taken the right decision in the sense that what I was privileged to be in a meeting recently where what needs to be done is being discussed. That what they need to do is to look at all the previous reports and sieve out what needs to be implemented and drive those implementations systematically. Like what Romy said, that those review has not been systematically implemented. I know there are bits of it that are being done. There's a whole human rights manual that has been developed, and what is expected is that in a period of about 5 years, as people go for promotion exam, every police officer will have gone through those human rights training. But the systematic implementation has not happened because of a lot of reasons, poor funding that we have talked about. So I hope that with this new zeal and this new opportunity, that everything will be put on the table, there will be proper funding, and there will be systematic implementation of everything that is required to have a police force that can really police in a democratic society in the 21st century.
Now, we wouldn't be fair to the police, Commissioner, if we concluded this conversation without focusing on the fact that a few of them did lose their lives, especially in the tail end of this protest when they turned violent. I mean, we've seen police officers lynched, we've seen police stations burnt, and yet, as far as I know, in the sort of terms of reference that was put out for the panels that you said could be a quick win, there was sort of no overt mention of the way the families of the police officers that were killed are going to get justice. Is it important that we also begin to humanize them?
There are very fine officers in this country, very good officers who have given all, including paid the ultimate price for this country. We do not celebrate them. And what is happening now is just an extension of that issue of not celebrating officers who have given so much. And so for me, it's not about those who were killed at the end of the NSAS protests, but also those who have lost their lives going backwards. Remember those, for example, who chased, was it in Jalingo or in Ukari, where soldiers mistakenly killed police officers? What has happened to them, to their families and all of that? So there are a lot of police officers who die in the line of duty, and we do not celebrate them, and nothing is being done about them and all of that.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, gentlemen, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on Pivotal, Mr. Romy Mom, a commissioner at the Police Service Commission, and Dr. Otiv Ibuzo, Center LSD, a civil society organization focused on human rights and police reform. Join us again next month for another edition of Pivotal.